I am now in a position to fit the timing chest cover. I have been around and checked the torque of all of the nuts to make sure that nothing's going to come loose once I've fitted this, and I've also confirmed that the gap between the stator and the rotor is sufficient, and the reason for that is the bigger the gap, the less power you will get out of the alternator. This is a three-phase alternator. It's supposed to produce 180 watts, which the rectifier regulator will require to charge the battery. The gap should be about 8th thou. Mine's around 7th thou all the way around, although bigger at the bottom than the top. You can actually take this all off, move the studs up, bend them very, very slightly and put it back on. But I feel that the gap, the bigger the gap, the less the the higher the reluctance, the less power you get out. So so I tend to go towards the tight side, which is about 7th thou in this case. And I haven't turned. If you remember on the Norton, I actually skimmed the outside of the rotor and the inside of the stator, because that being a brand new alternator from wherever they come from now, it wasn't circular and it certainly wasn't concentric. So that's okay, and I've turned the engine over to make sure that that gap doesn't change. Now the next stage, I've got my Allen screws ready. There's 9 Allen screws, and I have the gasket. I haven't removed the Trispark ignition system because the wire is actually all laced in and connected up in here, and I figured it would be easier to make a little slit in the gasket and fit that over the wire, and then use some free bond to glue all that together, rather than undoing all the wiring with the possibility of making mistakes. So yeah, so we'll get on with that next. I have fitted the Allen screws, 9 of them, in the in the timing chest cover, and obviously move the wire through a little bit. So I'm sort of ready now to actually do the timing. I use some 3 bond 1207B gasket glue. This is, I understand, the same stuff that Suzuki recommend, mostly around where the gap is, where I have to cut to get it over the wire. I find that works very well. Others use various different 3 bond products. One I was researching recently, this has a tack time of about 6 minutes. One I was researching has a very similar tack time, but it's actually supposedly even better for vibration, which perhaps on the twin is more important than a triple. That is the 1217H. They all have a very similar performance from what I can see, and that some of the other people that I drag race with have they use a different one again, another grey one. I guess each to their own. That has a longer tack time of about 60 minutes, but working here, tack time's not fantastically important unless you go off and make coffee or something. Right, so the next thing is to do the timing. Having installed the timing chest cover, the next job is to install the Trispark ignition and set the timing. Initially, you need to set the engine to its ignition point, and there is a description in the Trispark instructions, and they talk about the timing chest side cylinder, and they call it number 1, but I would call it number 3. I always use the left-hand cylinder one sitting on the bike as number 1, but there we go. So you actually rotate the engine, and I use the kickstart for that, so that you get this piston, we'll call it number 1, piston to top dead center, or approximately to top dead center, and it is, and that both rockers are loose or at the correct setting. Right, so having done that, you then need to rotate the engine backwards to actually find the 38° before top dead center point. I have a timing tool with a pointer that actually goes into the indent in the crankshaft, and this one has 2 threads, coarse and fine, and of course it is a coarse thread on here. Now on some of these are actually a lot longer, so you can't screw them all the way in. This one not so much, so the engine will still turn over, and this is one of the reasons why I have the primary timing the primary cover off, so I can actually rotate the engine backwards before top dead center using a spanner to actually find the timing point. You will find that as you rotate it, this pin will need to come out and then go back in when you can find the indent in the crankshaft, and at that point you will see that the pointer will actually be pointing at the timing mark on the motor, assuming you put the motor the right way around, so it's shown in the A and B timing marks and not the main timing mark for a twin, so that won't help. Right, okay. So. Going backwards, there we go. So that should now be on the timing mark, so let's go and have a look at that. Okay. So the next job, having got the plunger all the way in and checked the timing mark, is to fit the rotor. The Trispark rotor has an Allen screw with a washer, and obviously the taper on the back. This taper does not have a little notch like some of the other one does, but it does have a timing mark, which is the magnet, in fact, so that fits into the end of the camshaft, and there are a couple of checks that we need to do. In the Trispark box there is a tool, piece of perspex, and this is used to ensure that the rotor, where the magnet is 2 millimeters from the face, the test face of the piece of perspex, and that sets the distance between the magnet on the rotor and the back of the stator to the correct distance to trigger the ignition system. So I will tighten that up and get in there with some feeler gauges. 2mm is 80 thou, so I've just got to go and get my feeler gauges and make that measurement. There are other ways to do it, of course. You can find a 2mm shim or something similar to actually check in there. The next step is to position the rotor such that it is 22 millimeters, 21.99 in fact, 22 millimeters from the magnet, that is, from the screw hole. This is a juggle. Let's try it that way. Remembering, of course, that we will be strobing this, so it will be more accurately set using the strobe light. So, having set that gap, that distance, we'll gently tighten up the rotor so that it seats on the taper, and then we will actually measure the distance between the face where the stator fits on and the front of the rotor. Now I've put that measurement device somewhere, just have to find it. So I found it and put it somewhere very safe. I have a set of feeler gauges, of which I've got 24, 23, 22 and 11, which makes up approximately 80 thou or 2 millimeters. So this is always a juggle. I think I must sit down on the floor to be able to get into there, and then I'll make the measurement and then struggle to get up, and I'll come back once I've done that. By positioning the measurement device as far up in the corner as you can and coming across the rotor, I've made a measurement of 44 thou, which is 1.7 millimeters. Now the requirement is 2 millimeters between the two faces, plus or minus 0.6, which is obviously 1.4 to 2.6, and I have 1.7, so that's well within the range. Yeah, which is good. So the next step is to actually mount the stator in the correct position, and they're quite insistent about having the wire in a specific location stroke position. So we will do that and then find the 3 pillar bolts that actually hold this in place, set the rotor so that set the status, sorry, so that the pillar bolts or the adjustment is in the middle of the slot, and I will come back once I've done that. Having installed the stator with the 3 screws and tightened them up using a 3/16 AF 5/16 AF spanner with the slots in the middle. I'll go on to the next bit. I have positioned the stator and the cable similar to the picture in the instruction manual for the Trispark. It's a nice colour picture, and it seems rude not to copy what they've done. With all of the Trispark ignition installed, and I have obviously wired it up, which I showed some videos ago now. There is a static test that you can do. So the stator is wound all the way clockwise. I have installed spark plugs. I can't see them because I have the Trispark high energy coils. It's advisable to have spark plugs in and ground them so that the energy will actually be dissipated in the spark and not inside the coil, which could damage it. And switch the ignition on, which we have done, and the little test light should be out. As you rotate the Trispark module counterclockwise, at some point the little red light should come on, and that is the point where the engine is firing, and it is still set to 38 degrees before top dead center. The probe is in the indent in the camshaft, and that actually is the static timing point. So we will actually tighten up the stator, if I can move it. I don't want to move it. Ah, there we go. Oops, too much. It just comes on there. Again, just comes on there, and we will tighten that up. And obviously, oh. Make sure all this is tightened down. I mean, once the timing is set statically, you can then obviously adjust it with a timing light and potentially improve the timing a little bit, and obviously check it in the future. It becomes relatively simple at that point. So what we can now do is take the probe out to allow the engine to turn over, and see if the sparks fly. Probe is out, ignition is on, and turning the engine over, we should see sparks. Not sure if you can see them. Let's get in a little closer.